Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rybrary. I am your librarian. Hope you're having a good day today. This is the second part in my review and ranking of the stories in Stephen King's Night Shift. This will be number 10 to number 1 in my ranking. The first video, which I'll link in the description, was the rankings of number 20 to 11. And the reason I'm here up front mentioning this to you is because I did not, in the review itself, mention that it would be split up into two parts because I did not know when I was recording it that would be happening. And so I just wanted to let you know what's going on up front. I really hope you enjoy it. And let me know what you think. Next up at number 10 is Trucks. This is a fun one and is a better use of the, possessed or haunted machine trope that King plays with here and there, and that I didn't like in The Mangler. I think it's better here. The premise of the story basically is that it starts where a few people have been trapped in a convenience store or like a truck stop type thing. There are a series of trucks, giant trucks that have them kind of trapped in this convenience store, and it takes place over several days. So that these people are just trying to stay alive and not go outside and be attacked by these trucks. And the trucks have no drivers. There's seemingly no possible way that this could be happening, and the story is largely about these people just trying to survive. King manages to make these trucks menacing, and which I think he would go on and reuse the same techniques in Christine later on. It's got a very creepy ending. It's got very creepy implications about what is going on. I'm not inclined to think that like a haunted machine is cool. You're gonna have to sell me on that usually. But I think he did here. So good on you, Stephen King. At number 9 is I Am the Doorway, which is a great title. I love that title. And this is about a former astronaut who, on a trip in space some years before, was infected with some kind of alien or possessed or something by some kind of alien entity. This possession or infection or whatever has been causing him to grow eyes in his hands, so he keeps them bandaged up. This is a great bit of body horror. I read this book as part of a book club, and my friend, one of my friends read it, was very unsettled by the descriptions of these eyes being embedded in this guy's hands, and I was like, yeah, it's awesome, right? it's gross, it's awesome, but yeah. So he kind of is playing host to these alien entities, and one really cool thing about this story is whatever this entity is, you get to see its reactions to what the main character sees on Earth, and how repulsed they are by the things that we love, like sunshine and nature and other people, and they're just repulsed by all of this, and it's a lot of fun for that reason. I won't really give away where the story goes. That's just sort of the setup, and they start kind of compelling this guy to do things, and he's trying to figure out a way to stop it from happening. And yeah, it's good fun. My only and main complaint about that I would say about this is that the idea is, I think, robust enough to be more than this, and it's just a short story, so I don't feel like I got as much out of it as you could get out of something like this. The main complaint is just that there wasn't enough of it, really. But yeah, it's a cool story. I like alien horror, I like body horror, and you get both of those here. So, good story. At number 8, we have The Boogeyman. This story is about a man named Lester who is recalling the story, or is recalling most of the events of the story to his therapist. and is telling his therapist how all three of his children have died, seemingly at the hands of the boogeyman, whatever that is. He is given kind of in dreams messaging that this might be the result of the boogeyman, but he kind of disregards it, as you would, having dreams about a fictional child's fear. But yeah, this is a good one. It's this is one of the first ones in this collection, or of the ones that I've listed, that the character work is really good. Like, you both care about and feel sorry for, and also don't like Lester. He's kind of portrayed as an asshole, but you feel bad for him also. So it's interesting in that way. Stephen King is known for his character work, so that this is definitely an example of that. It's pretty dark and horrific, and has a good twist ending. I can see how some, as with a lot of other Stephen King work, there's like child death, and child harm stuff. So I can definitely see how some wouldn't care for this. But I thought it was really good. And at number 7, we have Gray Matter. This takes place during a winter storm, and a couple locals are gathering in a town in Maine. Obviously it's Stephen King, so this, along with several other stories in this collection, take place in Maine. But yeah, this takes place in a small Maine town where there's a nor'easter happening. A young boy kind of arrives at this general store that all these older people are hanging out in, and says that something is wrong with his dad. Is deathly afraid of something. When he arrives at this store, and recalls some things about his father to a couple of the men here, and they decide to go walk to the boy's house, and his father's house. His father's name is Richie, and see what's going on. What the boy recounted is that his father, who was on workers' comp, he was an alcoholic, and he drank a bad beer one day and started to change. He started to not be able to tolerate light. Started to, skin started to turn gray and pulpy, and gradually just consumed only beer, and ultimately turns into some kind of like gray creature. I won't, spoil what happens or where it goes, but yeah, I really like this one. So my first encounter with this short story was its adaptation on Shudder's Creepshow series, which is really good if you've never seen it. The adaptation stars Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad and other things, and as well as Tobin Bell, who plays Jigsaw in the Saw movies. Yeah, this is great. Like I said, I like gooey body horror stuff, which this has, and this also is a very much a typical King story in that it's it's got a kid who's mistreated by their parents in some ways, and the parent is an alcoholic. Alcoholism obviously features in a lot of King's works, especially early works when he himself was an alcoholic, and a lot of those works were him wrestling with that and the way he's acted toward his kids as a result of that. I think there is some symbolism here with regard to like how Richie, this started when he was injured and on workman's comp, and how without a reason to be productive and to be a functioning member of society, we can and with compounded with addiction, with alcohol addiction, we can become these things. We can become like these creatures that are just kind of gray blobs, gooey gray blobs. Yeah, this is a really good one. Definitely recommend it. Number 6, Graveyard Shift. We're getting into the really good ones now, folks. This one is about a worker at a factory, a worker by the name of Hall, who works at this factory. And, we see early on that the owners and operators of this factory aren't necessarily concerned with quality, maintenance, and keeping the factory up to codes, and that kind of thing. And this main character Hall and several other employees who work the night shift are tasked with cleaning up a sub basement, and they start to discover the presence of rats, and the rats might not be, just normal rats. They seem to be big and vicious, and so this is a mutated killer rat story. And I love that kind of thing. I read last year The Rats by James Herbert, which came out around the same time. James Herbert's a British horror author. He wrote this book called The Rats. Great little, nasty little short book about a killer rat invasion of London, and has some great commentary on the decay and the neglect in post-war England, and also had some great perspectives of marginalized people, especially for the time. Yeah, there's like a gay character, there's a homeless character, and in the 70s, that's something to say for a random horror book. But this is not a review of The Rats, but you should go read that. This is King's take on sort of the same idea of these mutated killer rats, but and he plays with a similar theme of like the neglect of this, in this case, corporation that owns and operates this factory, and how it enables these rats to grow and multiply. The portrayal of the rats was really good. One detail I really liked was that the biggest, most deformed rats don't have feet or legs or claws, and they're just like kind of bowling pin, kind of like disgusting bowling pin type things. I liked that a lot. The one criticism that I would sort of give this is that the main character Hall does something in the story that is like seemingly out of nowhere, and doesn't seem to be in character necessarily, and is like sort of like, wait, what, like, why did he do that? And it's like it's a big thing that he does, and it just like gave me a weird, like, what, why? Maybe it was just for the sake of adding to the story, but I think King should have found a way to set it up better if that is the case. But overall, this is a really good creepy one. I didn't mention, but this takes place in the middle of the summer, and the heat, and like the sweltering heat amid all this like disgusting surroundings. It really makes for some great atmosphere. Definitely good stuff. Number 5 is Last Rung on the Ladder. This is not a horror story, but I thought was really good, and really kind of heartbreaking, but in a powerful, well-executed way. This is about a successful lawyer who is recalling growing up on a farm with his younger sister, and how they would, in this barn, they would climb this ladder, 70 feet up, and like walk out on like a beam that stretched across from the ladder across the length of the barn, and would jump into piles of hay from 70 feet up in the air. Not something that would fly in many places today. Stephen King is obviously like here writing about something taking place in like the 50s. In fairness, the father of these two kids like tells them to not do this because the ladder is not stable, and it turns out that one of the times when they're doing this, the ladder breaks, and she's 50, 60 feet up, and she's hanging on for dear life, and the brother works furiously to try and get some hay bales underneath her as fast as he can. The story itself thematically is really about like being there for people and what can happen when you're not there for people. It's a sad story. It's very powerful. And I've complained about other stories here not being horror stories and that being a detractor for them. This was a case where this was like absolutely not a detractor for me. This is just a really good story. Okay, here we go. Top 4. This one is Sometimes They Come Back. This is about a teacher who is generally happy with his job as a teacher, but has one class of undesirables, shall we say, delinquents and the like. And when he's around the kind of bullies and tough guys that are his students in this class, he's reminded of how his younger brother, when they were kids, was killed by a bully. It kind of shakes him. And eventually he starts to receive a few new students, and they look eerily like the group of boys who were responsible for his young brother's death. And then it goes from there. But yeah, this is like, again, more classic King stuff, like bullies, nostalgia for childhood, being affected a lot by the things in your life, and how horror can come out of the traumas in our past. Yeah, this was really good. This was the first one, this is, I think, number 10 in the sequence of the stories. And this was the first one where I felt like, okay, this is King doing King. And it definitely shines for that. Like, he does a certain thing well, and it's definitely present here. All right, now these top 3 are like everything I'd say from maybe 15 down to now is like really solid, really good stuff. But these top 3 are like for sure the best stories in here. If I had to, tell people if they wanted to read a few of these stories, I would just direct them to these 3. And number 3 is Quitters Inc. I initially read this in high school. Actually, I was they offered a mystery and horror class in my high school, and I was like, when I was reading this, I was recalling how much I loved that class and how awesome it was in my high school that this was a class that was offered. So this is about a man who is kind of not quite having a midlife crisis, but is just like kind of plateaued in life and is having some marital issues, maybe is not really doing great at work, and he's a daily smoker, as a lot of people were at the time, and smokes, kind of chain smokes. So this guy runs into a friend at an airport who he notes is looking a lot better than he was the last time that they saw each other, and who seems to be in great shape. In their conversation, it comes out that this guy quit smoking, and that kind of turned his life around. One thing I will say about this story is like the amount that King attributes to quitting smoking in terms of like making your life better. Like, there is, you can obviously make your life better by quitting smoking, but it's not like you're going to magically, have a better job and have your relationship problems fixed because you quit smoking. But anyway, the main character asks his buddy that he runs into how he turned it around, how what he did and how did he quit smoking. The guy directs him to a service called Quitters Inc. And after meeting with the people at Quitters Inc., the main character realizes that what the service that they offer is that constantly monitor you and watch you and surveil you all the time. And it gradually like tapers off over time, but for the first handful of months, just constant observation. And if they catch you smoking a cigarette, you get a punishment in a increasingly severe ways, and they demonstrate this by they show a rabbit being tortured by this electric floor that they have in a room in the Quitters Inc. headquarters, and it's just a nice little nasty bit of horror. Repeat offenses of smoking cigarettes get progressively worse things, including getting fingers cut off, getting serious long-term injuries. Some of the best stuff in this story is the representative from Quitters Inc. that the main character is interacting with is just like laying this all out in a very like matter of fact way, and just to hear this kind of thing described in this way is really disturbing. Just being like, we will, break your arms if you on offense number 3, and that kind of thing. I remember reading this as a kid and being like, wow, that's horrific. And but also, I remember that being an early exposure to this idea of like, how hard is quitting really if if you like have, if someone is pointing a gun at your head and if you smoke a cigarette, they pull the trigger, then I'm pretty sure most people could manage to not smoke cigarettes or whatever. And it's just an interesting rumination on addiction and what it would take to kick a habit. It's just a great story. All right, almost there. Number 2 is Children of the Corn. This is another one that I read initially, when I was a kid, and even before I had read it, I had seen the film adaptation from the 80s. And even at that, even as, a young teen or whatever, I thought that movie was terrible and was like really corny, so to speak. And then I read this short story, and it's like so much better than the movie that was made based on it. This story is about a man and his wife are on a road trip across the country to visit, I believe, his wife's brother. They're in Nebraska, in the middle of nowhere, and amidst rows and rows and rows of corn for miles in every direction, and they encounter a young boy who is shoved out in the middle of the road, who has had his throat slit and dies, almost immediately after they encounter him on the road on this drive. On venturing into the nearest town to figure out what happened with this boy, they discover that something is very strange about the town. There aren't any adults anywhere, and the evidence suggests that this town hasn't really functioned in over a decade. From there, more is revealed about what's going on. This incorporates so much great stuff about horror that I like. Evil children is always fun. The setting of just like this endless world of corn is just a great setting for a horror story. It includes some great, religious stuff. I'm a huge fan of religious-based horror, especially like tainted religion stuff. It's a big thing for me, and then that's kind of the meat of what's going on here. Yeah, I would like to, there are things that I would like to talk about at greater length with this story, but I don't really want to spoil stuff, so I'm just going to leave it at this is a really good one, and it makes sense that it was adapted into a movie. By the way, almost all of these stories have been adapted in one form or another, but this is certainly the most famous adaptation of all these stories, which I think it's funny because it's not good, but the story is very good. All right, and we're finally here at number 1, and number 1 for me out of all the stories here in Night Shift is Jerusalem's Lot, the first one in the collection, and I kind of knew when I read it that it was going to be my favorite, and that I didn't think that anything was going to replace it. It's kind of head and shoulders even above Children of the Corn, just in virtue of the fact that it contains so many things that I love in horror. It's interesting among the other stories in this collection in that it doesn't feel like a Stephen King story, and it mostly just feels like a pastiche, or a mix of pastiches of Edgar Allan Poe, of H.P. Lovecraft, maybe even Bram Stoker a little bit, mostly in that it's an epistolary story. It's told mostly through letters. This story takes place in 1850 in Maine, of course. It's about a man named Charles Boone who inherits a Gothic mansion from a dead uncle. Upon taking ownership of this, he starts to notice sounds in the walls and weird things appearing and that kind of thing. Through looking around the house and seeing writings of his uncles and previous family members, starts to realize this house has some connection with a neighboring town called Jerusalem's Lot. I should say at this moment that this is the same Jerusalem's Lot where Salem's Lot takes place. Jerusalem's Lot is the full name of Salem's Lot. Other than that, it doesn't have anything to do with the book or the other story that I mentioned earlier that references it. He's realizing that there's this connection between this house and the weird things that are happening there, and the town, which has been seemingly abandoned and completely untouched for many, many years. And he starts to learn about pagan or unholy religious activities that have happened here historically, and it's a shunned village basically from people in nearby areas. I love this story. I'm a huge Lovecraft fan. I'm a Poe fan, and this has great elements from both of them. On the Poe side, it's got Gothic setting, dark family stuff, and on the Lovecraft side, it's got mentions of otherworldly deities and unholy texts. This actually does make it explicit reference to the Cthulhu mythos, the wider Cthulhu mythos, in that it incorporates the book De Vermis Mysteris, which originally actually was incorporated into the Lovecraft mythos by Robert Bloch, the writer of Psycho, when he was a young man. It's got great atmosphere. It's got all these horror elements that I love. It really sells the idea of horror of place in making the town of Jerusalem's Lot really like a really cursed feeling place. It feels sort of weird saying that this is the best, because this is King trying to do something other than what he normally does, but I just loved it so much that I had to put it at number one. When I finished reading it, I was so excited, and it just really, set my imagination on fire, which is how I describe things that I, really love, is that they set my imagination on fire. And this one really, really did. So that is my ranking of all of the stories in Night Shift. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a little tougher to make than I thought. But I will keep doing these kinds of things and keep trying to get better at, figuring out how to make the kinds of videos that I want to make in a way that works for me, and that it will be enjoyable for people to watch. Let me know what you think about this. I would really appreciate that. And thank you again for visiting the Rybrary. And take care.